Okay, so Kim, we are going to talk about a post that was made about whether it is, how did you put it, necessary to believe in a higher power to be involved in mediumship. And yeah,
Yes.
which is a great question. But I think first, just because I noticed some of the feedback from that I don't know that we all have the same definition of a higher power. Because there were a couple comments that said, well, I don't believe in God. And but so then what's our definition of God? Are we talking about one singular entity like the spirit people we talk to and
Right.
that we bring forth the evidence? Or are we talking about, for when you say higher power, that could just be we recognize something grander than ourselves that we are all part of. I don't know that that necessarily means some individualized entity that makes the world go around with some kind of bizarre magic wand. It's just
Right. I mean, as I go on in life into my 60th year on this planet, I'm starting to believe more and more of a non-entity and just the energetic um, form of enlightenment. Does that
no,
make sense?
it does. It makes perfect. Yeah, it does, because that's, I think, if we back up your question a little bit, because I know just because of some of the comments, if that got translated into, do I follow a God, or do I follow a religion, or do I follow a whatever? And I don't know that that's, and if people do, I don't know that that interferes or creates a better or whatever in terms of mediumship, because mediumship is a talent, right? Just like playing piano or doing plumbing, or
Right.
that's a talent. So how do you connect with your talent? And for me, connecting with your talent is then connecting to everything that connects us and why we're even here, which is the higher power. I don't know that I guess I just needed to point that out, because because I think that's something definitely to contemplate while we are pursuing our talent of mediumship, is how we connect there. How do we connect to that energy? And maybe the higher power is just the energy matrix that has formed everything. I don't know that it has to be this singularized entity first, just start
Right.
the conversation.
Well, I don't believe, well, let's just take religion and just kick it out.
Mm,
Let's just kick out religion. So for me,
yeah.
yeah, I don't believe that you need to have a religion in order to whatever that religion is to be a medium. I don't even think you need to believe in anything to be a medium, because it's an ability.
Mhm.
It is, and it's funny because people will say it's a God-given talent, or it's a universal talent. Let's not a universal, but a universal given talent, let's say. I don't know. But I mean, there's a lot of talents that people have that are just natural talents and universally given, such as a great baseball player or a singer or an artist or whatever it may be. So I don't believe so much that you need to believe in anything per se. For me, though, it I believe in a higher power, something greater than myself. So, like you had just mentioned, so I feel connected universally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And there's not just a spiritual, I'm out there precedent for that. I mean, we have, lots of physics theories and chemistry and, astrology, astronomy, not astrology, astronomy, that, points to that there is a more happening there. There is a more, and I think in terms of mediumship, when we are willing to accept the more or connect to the more, or even just explore the more, then the possibilities inherent in that talent get expanded, because then we're not limiting ourselves to any kind of paradigm. And if we're not limiting ourselves, then, the recognition of the quote spirit world, then in the present, connection to mediumship, becomes broader than name, date, and serial number. It's
Right.
we can recognize that connection of energies and that, that flow of life, and not so much, well, isn't it great this person lived in a blue house? Well, yeah, it's great, but what else? Why is this even necessary, possible? What else is in? And I know you and I have gone to, there was one workshop you and I went together where part of the exercise was to go beyond that, where we had that base evidence, but then it was, okay, so we have the base evidence and we verified with our partner that we have this particular spirit person. Now, can we expand that into the spirit person's experience now that is not in the physical, and how does that come forth in the evidence or even in our own feelings? And I don't know that if we are limiting ourselves in our thought and our exploration, if that type of evidence isn't, we limit that. We
do limit that, but I just wanted to back up a little bit, and I want to talk about the spiritual nature, but more importantly about when people say, well, I'm very spiritual, meaning that they are a medium or they are a psychic.
Ah,
A lot of people that are mediums and that are psychics that are not spiritual people.
this is true.
They label themselves as spirit. So you don't necessarily have to be a medium or a psychic or do Reiki or do aromatherapy or yoga or anything like that to be a spiritual person. The most spiritual people that I know don't even believe in any of this. They
Right.
believe nothing of this. But the difference is, they're walking the walk. They're not talking the talk.
Oh,
They're giving back.
mm-hmm.
By their actions,
Right.
but whether it's, helping humanity in whatever way. My husband is probably the most, and trust me, he curses like a sailor. He beeps the horn at people, gives them a finger, everything that you would think a spiritual person should not be, but he is the most spiritual person because he looks at people as individuals and doesn't group people in a certain, whatever. Let's leave it at that. But he treats people, with dignity and respect. This is a guy that works with recovering addicts and alcoholics. He doesn't give a shit if the guy's been in prison for 20 years. He doesn't care what they did, well, to an extent. But when they come out and then being rehabilitated, whether they're going to AA meetings or NA meetings, he's the first one saying, I'll give you a ride. Here's my number. Here you go. You have any place to go for Christmas? You have any place to go for Easter? Why don't you come over to my house? And in the meantime, I'm looking at make sure my pocketbook's but that's a different story, because we did have an incident like that one time. But anyhow, yeah, so I don't want people to think that, being spiritual means that you have to believe in, any of these types of modalities that we practice.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up, because because on the flip side, you could be an extremely talented psychic / medium and be very unscrupulous,
Yeah.
so, and it's necessary to be, cognizant of all of that. Just because that we can, somebody can bring forth evidence does not mean that, their heart is in any kind of place for that, in terms of service. So yeah, so you're right. You don't, just because you wear the moniker of medium does not mean you're the uber spiritual person, or vice versa.
I can remember the first teacher that I went to. I'm not talking about the Journey Within, this way before the Journey Within. It was a town next to me, and anyhow, I was in there for a couple of years. In the second year I was in there, a girl comes in, who was, she was one of my regular classmates. She was very, very upset. And, we were talking to her, this is before class. And she was diagnosed with cancer, so we were kind of, we're talking with her, condoling her, not condolences, just being compassionate towards her and stuff. And so the teacher comes in and says, okay, enough of this chit chat stuff. Let's go. Let's, we're going to meditate. And somebody said, well, so-and-so, Anne just got diagnosed with cancer. She says, really sorry about that, but do that after class.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that same person was into Uwipis, which is an Indian ceremony and whatnot, and had some guy come to New Jersey. And it was funny because here he is, this man from the Dakotas, this Indian, and was late for everything. People were waiting, got babysitters, stuff like that, charge everybody about $500 for the Uwipi, swear to God. 250 or 500, I forget what it was, but it was a lot of money. And then as he goes into this big, huge room, he starts to rip apart people from New York and New Jersey. And I'm looking at this other girl like, well, there's a spiritual master, and do you hear how he's talking? It's unbelievable. So, and then he offered to do another one like 3 weeks later or something like that. And I was approached by the teacher, well, it's going to be free, but you should really throw him $100 donation. I went, no, I'm not throwing him anything, and I'm not going. So yeah. So those are the type of people sometimes you have to watch out for.
Yeah. And also and I'm going to put a flip side on that, because you just reminded me of something. And sometimes those that are in that place, just like you said before, like your husband can be like really grumpy or whatever, or look like a something, but then you think you know what I mean? So I think we need to remember the humanity in it all too. It's just, that, and I'm not saying this person was deceiving or whatever in the moment, but it just makes me real from your two stories that sometimes the perception, or sometimes the persona, or even, if you're super famous in one area or another, does not preclude you from being a human.
Right.
It's and to remember that. I remember there's a lot of people that know Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
And this is one of because he has a lot of insight, and he's, sometimes I really enjoy listening to him, and other times I'm like, dude, you just said that 12 times, but he's got this place in our spiritual, whatever, to go to for books or whatever. And when Facebook first started doing live streaming, people that had a lot of followers were offered that first, and he was one of them. So I remember quite a few days in a row, because he just loved this new toy that he could get on and talk to people in real time, so flip, it would be Deepak Live. And about, I don't know, 2 months into all this, he's in a public area, at like a outdoor coffee house type area, and he's doing his little video talking about the love and the wonders of the universe, and it's just like really lovely, beautiful, soul inspiring stuff. And all of a sudden he turns around with the live camera still on and yells at the two young ladies behind him for being too loud. Can't they see he's videoing? And he's just like, rah, 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 rah. And it's a public place. So, and then he turns around and started talking about the lovely love of the universe again. And I'm like, that is fantastic. How fantastic is that we just saw a real moment, a real human moment.
Yeah.
With somebody that is supposed to be like walking around with a halo on their head all the time, it's just, but it's, and it didn't diminish any of the point he was trying to make, the point, but I got such a kick out. I'm like, man, he's a real person. Look at that. He's a real person.
Yeah, there's a fine line with people like that, husband, and then other people that act like they're up here, and then they do something totally like just really deceitful. You know what I mean? Just totally, oh, so,
Yeah.
good, to have people show you all sides of them that they are fully human.
Yeah.
with-
And to be
with
discerning,
flaws.
we're
Yeah.
not all kittens and roses, but we're not all nastiness either. And I don't know that we need to be fully one or the other to be the quote spiritual. And I'm not even sure what that means half the time.
Yeah.
How did we get there, Kim? We started off with the higher power and mediumship.
All right. So do you need to believe in God to be a medium? My answer would be no. But do I believe in a higher power, and does it enhance my mediumship? Yes, because I just feel more connected to whatever that higher power may be.
Yeah, I think that's right. And higher power can really just mean the best you, connecting to the best you.
Yes.
What is that? What piece of you shines the most bright, and that's what we strive for. And
I know I'm going off on a tangent about, no, I'm not going to go off on a tangent. I'm just giving food for thought. This is totally off the subject because I've seen a lot of posts about spirit guide, spirit guide, spirit guide, spirit guide.
oh, I went off on that yesterday with a group I had. What do you want to say?
My spirit guide told me to do this and say, your best answers are within your own self. Your higher self has all your answers.
There
Right?
it is. There, I totally 100, 100 degrees. Yes,
Right?
totally. And
Right. Your higher self is your spirit guide.
it is. It truly, truly is. And that's where we're connected to that everything. Do you know that the spirit guides in the way that is being used now in the spiritualist or the medium or whatever didn't start coming about in the vocabulary until 1917? It's a relatively new invention, and I want to say invention because it's, I'm not saying there aren't individualized entities that help us in some fashion. I don't want to like get into that, but
Right.
but the idea that we have to check in or be told or follow or spirit told us to do something totally negates our personal responsibility in our own decision-making process, and get a grip. Get a grip.
Yeah.
I had recently I had a reading from someone that wanted to give me a particular spirit guide. This particular spirit guide, yada, 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 you need to go meditate and find them because yada, 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 they're going to tell you whatever, the greatest things in the universe. And I thought about that later. And the part of the planet where this medium had this particular guide coming from was Australia. And recently, I have a couple of students from Australia. I speak to one lovely lady that does a lot of work with Aboriginals in Australia. And I'm thinking, is it really a guide that you're picking up from me? Or is it that I'm having these conversations with these people and really contemplating that kind of atmosphere?
Exactly. It's within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of you. So, naturally that's going to come up when somebody's doing a psychic reading on you. We would like to label it like there's these other special entities around you telling you to do this, telling you to do that. You have to, there was a post, I think what the post was about, and whether or not the weather was going to change in a different area of the country. Why am I going to concentrate on a spirit guide about the weather when I have an option to go on weather.com? Of people that were trained and went to school for 8, 9, 10 years, you know what I mean? That know the weather. Of course I'm going to go there. Am I going to ask a spirit guide about what investments I should make, or am I going to go to an investment expert that has been studying it for years? I'm going to the investment specialist.
Right, exactly. Or when you're making decisions for yourself and you're in that place, you're really listening to yourself and what you need. It's like, don't outsource that. You know, we are way more powerful and we are way more connected. And if we understand ourselves as a soul or an individualized entity or a part of or whatever your verbiage is there, you know, part of the universe, then act like it.
Like that, Jen. You're getting handing down the whip. Cracking my whip, Miss Jen Shepherd. Okay. That's right, though. We have it within. And I like how you said that. We don't need to outsource. We're outsourcing. We're not giving ourselves enough credit for our own decisions, or not giving ourselves credit for being spiritual beings. We always talk about we are spiritual beings in a physical body. Well, you're right. Act like it.
Own that. Totally own that.
All right.
All right. I think we're done.
I really enjoyed this one because we were on the map.
We'll be back next week. And if you have anything you'd like us to talk about, drop it in the comments. Thank you.
Bye-bye.